Chapter 504. What's that thing? How come you can come in without even asking? Feng Zhou, who had just entered the city, turned around and sat on Lao Bai's back. She was dressed in red and riding a white horse, looking very dashing. She was a little curious. At that time, she did not see clearly what Hui Lang had taken out. She only knew that it looked like a jade tablet. What kind of identity jade tablet could make the guards of the border city show such a respectful expression? Naturally, it's something that represents my identity. He glanced at her, who was dazzling and charming as she sat on the horse. He only felt that the red and white horse really suited her. Especially when she was dressed in men's clothing. She looked valiant and formidable, but also had an evil and charming aura. The corners of her eyes were slightly raised, and the charm emitted from her eyes seemed to fill the sky. She, who knew that her charm was boundless and could attract both men and women, was sitting on the horse's back at this moment. From time to time, she would throw seductive glances at the young girls on both sides, causing his entire face to darken. This woman, walking around in men's clothing, was indeed like what she had said. She came out to seduce people. His deep gaze swept across the bustling street in front of him, and landed on a restaurant about 100 meters away. His voice was low and cold. Let's go over there and sit for a while. Let Hui Lang buy a map of the Yan dynasty. Then we will know where the pharmacist's guild is. Hearing this, Feng Zhou, who was sitting leisurely on Lao Bai's back, blinked her eyes. Just as she was about to respond, she saw something thrown at her. She instinctively caught it, and when she looked down, she was stunned. It was actually a handkerchief with some seasonal fruits wrapped in it. She raised her head and looked around. She saw a few girls on the second floor looking at her shyly with bright eyes. When they saw her looking at them, they even revealed a shy smile at her. Seeing this, her eyebrows raised slightly, and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly, returning a charming smile. After that, she even picked up the handkerchief in her hand that was wrapped with fragrant fruits and sniffed it with an intoxicated expression, causing the women to scream out in excitement. Some of them even crazily wrapped the handkerchief in their hands with some fruits and threw them at her. Suddenly, a shocking scene appeared on the street. The women on the roadside, and even the young women in the shops and tea houses on both sides of the street, used handkerchiefs to wrap cantaloupes and small fruits and threw them to the handsome red-clothed noble young master sitting on the back of the white horse. In order to avoid being hit, Feng Zhou could only reach out and catch them one by one. When he opened them, he saw that they were all fruits and the like. Seeing this, his handsome face couldn't help but reveal a little pride. He softly said, "This young master's charm is boundless. There are so many fruits, I don't even need to buy them." With a smile on his face, Ling Hua took out a basket and put the melon seeds into it. The basket was filled with red and green melon seeds. Coupled with the handkerchief, the peddlers and shopkeepers on both sides of the street were surprised and murmured, "Who is that? Where did this handsome noble young master come from? This group of people seems to have just entered the city, right? More than half of the women in the city have come out. They are really capable." Hui Lang and Ning Yi, who were following beside him, saw this and the corners of their mouths twitched. Then they looked at their master's dark face and his entire body emitting a cold aura. They didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Chapter 505. Finally, they arrived at the restaurant. Feng Zhou handed Lao Bai over to the waiter to tie him up. Little Tun Yun followed him inside. When she turned around to look, she was startled. There were actually dozens of young women behind her, all of them looking at her with adoration in their eyes, causing the smile on her lips to immediately stiffen. "Young master, where did you come from?" "Young master, my family owns an inn. It's right in front. If young master and the others want to stay, I won't charge you." Young master, my family is a wealthy family in the city. There are a few courtyards that are unoccupied. Would young master like to stay in my residence temporarily? Young master. Their questions were filled with eagerness and excitement. They all surrounded her. Feng Nine smiled awkwardly as she was stared at affectionately by all those pairs of eyes. She looked at Ling Mohan for help. Unexpectedly, he snorted coldly and walked in by himself. Ladies, I appreciate your kind intentions. Please go back. She flashed a smile at them and hurriedly left behind a sentence. Then, she hurriedly entered the restaurant and walked towards the room on the second floor. Hui Lang and the others stopped her. They only turned and followed after Feng Zhou when she went up to the room. Seeing this, the women gradually dispersed, but there were still one or two who were unwilling to leave. They kept looking at the second floor from time to time, hoping that Feng Zhou would come out again so that they could take a look at her. Feng Zhou sat down at the table in the room. She sighed softly. The women in the city are really passionate. She was really frightened. Why did they all chase after her? Didn't you enjoy it? Ling Mohan glanced at her and said coldly. It's hard to enjoy a beauty's grace. It's not good to have too much of it. I can't digest it. She smiled and poured herself a cup of water. At this moment, Ling Shuang and Leng Hua walked in. Ying Yi stood guard outside the room. Hui Lang went to buy a map of the Yen Kingdom. Master, I've washed all the fruits. Leng Hua placed the washed fruits in the basket on the table and retreated to the side. That's quite a lot. She picked up a fruit and ate it while saying to Ling Shuang and Leng Hua, help yourself. There's too much to eat. As she spoke, she casually handed one to Ling Mohan who was sitting next to her. Here, it's a gift from my admirer. No need. He drank the water and lowered his gaze, not looking at her. He didn't take the fruit. Seeing this, Feng Zhou did not insist. After eating 2 fruits, the dishes on the table were almost all served. Because there were not many people, she asked Ling Shuang and Leng Hua to sit down and eat together. She then shouted outside, Ying Yi, come in and eat together. Let's eat while waiting for Hui Lang. Ying Yi, who was outside, did not dare to go in. Let him eat at the same table as the master. It would be strange if he could eat it. No need, they'll find their own food when they're hungry. Ling Mohan said as he poured the wine and ate with the dishes. Ling Shuang and Leng Hua did not have as many rules as them. Feng Zhou asked them to sit down and eat. They did not stand on ceremony and took whatever they wanted to eat. It was slower than they expected. Hui Lang waited until they were full before coming back. Master, Ghost Doctor, this is the map of the Yen Kingdom. The address of the Pharmacist Guild is here. I've seen it. If we take the airship, we should be there in half a day. He pointed to a place marked on the map and said. Okay, then let's go after eating. Chapter 506. Hui Lang Xing Yi also ordered a few dishes. After the 2 of them had eaten, the group left again. This time, because they had entered the border city of the Yen Kingdom, the airship could be taken out and used directly. Feng Zhou flicked his sleeve and a luxurious airship appeared. Just as the crowd was exclaiming, the group of people boarded the airship one after another. Lao Bai and the cloud-swallowing beast had already jumped on skillfully and found a place to lie down. Look! That airship is so luxurious. Those people are really from the aristocracy. Only the aristocracy can afford such a luxurious airship. That red-robed man's temperament is so outstanding. He doesn't look like someone from an ordinary family. That's true. Look at that group of people, they don't look like people to be trifled with, especially that bearded man. He's so cold. Looking at the group of people leaving in the luxurious airship, some of the women were full of melancholy. That kind of person was too outstanding. They were not from the same world as them. After half a day, they arrived at the town where the Pharmacist Guild was located. They got off the airship at the city gate and went on foot. Perhaps because he was frightened by the women in the border city, Feng Zhou did not dare to sit on Lao Bai's back to pretend to be cool. He only let Leng Hua hold Lao Bai's hand. As for the cloud-swallowing beast, it naturally walked beside them obediently. Its round and snow-white appearance frequently attracted the gazes of some women and children. Feng Zhou saw that it was already evening and the sky was getting dark. He said, "It's getting late. Let's find a place to rest for the night and go tomorrow morning." Ling Mohan responded, indicating that he had no objections. Since the two masters had no objections, the rest naturally had no objections. Therefore, they found an inn not too far away from the Pharmacist Guild. After allocating the rooms, Ling Mohan wanted to go out with her. Who knew that after knocking for a long time, there was no response? It was Hui Lang who came forward and said, "Master, I saw a ghost." He glanced around and paused. He swallowed back the words, "Ghost doctor," and said, "I saw the 9th young master take the two of them shopping." It would have been better if he didn't say that. Once he said that, Ling Mohan's face darkened. He glanced at him coldly and then turned back to the room. Hui Lang touched his nose and looked at Ying Yi, who was guarding the door. He silently asked, "Did I say something wrong again?" Ying Yi glanced at him and then looked away. On the other side, Feng Zhou, who was in an extremely good mood, walked around the streets with Leng Shuang and Leng Hua. Leng Hua. Leng. It's more lively outside, right? Leng Hua's eyes sparkled, unable to hide his joy, and, "Thank you, master, for bringing me out." In the past, his health was not good, so he could not go out much. Later on, when he followed his master, he spent most of his time in the mansion. This was the first time he came to such a place and saw the prosperity of a big country. She chuckled and looked around the streets aimlessly. However, she kept turning left and right, as if there was a way to go. The two men behind him followed quietly without asking any questions until they came to a place with the words "Black Market" hanging in gold on the door. At this time, the two men realized that their master wanted to go to the black market when he said that he was out for a stroll. Chapter 507. Feng Zhou glanced at the two of them and said, "I'm looking for your steward." As he spoke, he handed over a token. When the guard saw the token, his eyes narrowed. He quickly took it with both hands and said respectfully, "Young master, please come in. I'll immediately report to the steward." One of them quickly took the token to report to the steward, while the other brought them in. After handing the token to the person inside, the guard left. The person inside brought them to the main hall of the market and served them tea and pastries. The steward, who was chatting with two middle-aged men in another room, heard the knock on the door. He couldn't help but scold, "Blind thing. Don't you know I'm receiving an important guest?" The knocking stopped. The guard hesitated for a moment, but still reported, "Steward, someone came with a black token and wants to see you." Hearing this, the steward inside was slightly surprised. He looked at the other two people. Seeing them nod, he said, "Come in." The guard came in and didn't dare to look around. He only respectfully handed the black token in his hand forward. "Steward, this is the black token of our black market. I didn't dare to be negligent. I've asked someone to bring them to the main hall." The steward took a look and saw that it was the representative of their black market. He couldn't help but be surprised. He handed the black token to the two people sitting at the side and asked at the same time, "Who is this person who came with the black token?" "It's a very handsome young master in red. He's about 15 or 16 years old. He only has 2 attendants, one male and one female. The guard reported. You can leave first. He waved his hand, indicating for him to leave. Yes. The guard left and the door closed. At this time, the three people in the room spoke again. This black token is indeed from our black market. Every black token that is given out will be registered and reported. Moreover, it's not easy for ordinary people to get a black token. How could a young man have such a black token? No matter how he got it, since he came with the black token, I have to meet him. As the steward spoke, he was about to retrieve the black medallion when he saw the middle-aged man move his hand away. The steward looked at him in surprise, not understanding what he meant. This black token doesn't recognize people. He looked at the steward and suddenly said such a sentence. The steward and the middle-aged man were startled. After a long while, the steward slightly frowned and said, I'm afraid this is not good. We all work in the black market and should know the rules. Moreover, the young man can get the black token. I'm afraid his identity is not simple. If the higher-ups know, the consequences are not something we can bear. I'll go with you. I also want to know where this young man came from. You actually have a black order. The middle-aged man stood up, looked at the black token in his hand, and said, maybe this black token isn't his. The man next to him wanted to persuade him, but in the end, he didn't say anything. Instead, he stood up together, meaning that he also wanted to see what kind of person this young man was. Knowing their thoughts, the steward sighed and said, but I still have to remind you that if the young man can come with the black token, he is the most distinguished guest of our black market. You can't mess around. Mess around? You think too much. The middle-aged man smiled and made a gesture to let him go first. Chapter 508. When they arrived at the entrance of the great hall and walked in, the gazes of the three people landed on the young man in red robes. Seeing that the young man was extraordinarily handsome, their eyes flashed slightly and they walked in without batting an eyelid. The young man sitting on the left side of the great hall was wearing a dazzling red robe that was as eye-catching as fire. His delicate and handsome face was even rarer. The aura on his body was only the aura of profound energy, and it was the aura of a martial grandmaster. For such a young man to have the cultivation of a martial grandmaster, it could be seen that he was a disciple of an aristocratic family and had some talent. Looking at the young man again, he did not sit upright like the other disciples of aristocratic families. Instead, his two knees were crossed and his two legs were lightly crossed. There was a sense of carefreeness in his laziness, and a sense of wanton unrestrained. Sitting in the great hall, the young man did not have a trace of nervousness or uneasiness. On the contrary, his body emitted a kind of unrestrained and cold aura. It was a kind of unrestrained aura that did not match his seemingly harmless and handsome face. It was this kind of unrestrained aura that made the three people who entered put away their original thoughts. As for the man and woman standing behind him, they were directly ignored by them because their strength was simply not enough to look at. I've made you wait. The manager collected his thoughts and a warm smile appeared on his face. He did not care that the other party was only a 15 or 16-year-old youth and stepped forward to cup his hands in greeting. My surname is Huang and I'm the manager of this black market. May I know how to address you? From the moment they entered, Fengjiu had sensed that they were sizing her up, but she did not pay them any attention. At this moment, after taking a sip of tea, she raised her eyes to look at them. Her gaze swept past the two people behind Manager Huang and landed directly on Manager Huang. With an indifferent glance, she could tell that he was a cultivator of the golden core stage. The higher the rank of the black market of another country, the higher the strength of the manager. She was not surprised that he had such strength. As for the two people behind him, they were also cultivators of the golden core stage and their cultivations were in the intermediate stage. However, why did she feel so displeased when one of them looked at her? I wonder if Manager Huang is here to receive a guest. Or is he here to see me? She lowered her gaze and asked casually as she held the teacup in one hand and gently scraped the tea with the lid of the teacup with the other. Hearing this, Steward Huang's eyes flickered. He smiled and said, I haven't introduced them to you yet. These two are the deacons of the Great Yen Black Market. They are here to discuss some matters with me. Coincidentally, they heard that someone brought the black token here. Out of curiosity, they came along. I hope you don't mind. Oh. So you're also from the black market? Only then did she nod her head. She put down her teacup and stood up. Her gaze fell on the two people as she said, I have something to discuss with Manager Huang. Should the two of you leave for a moment? Actually, I also happen to have something to discuss with young master, and would like to take up some of young master's time, the middle-aged man said, his gaze falling on Fingzhou. He had no intention of avoiding him. Hearing this, Fingzhou raised her eyebrows and looked at the middle-aged man who had looked at her from the moment he came in. She brushed her robe and sat back on the chair again. Leaning against the back of the chair, she asked with some interest, What do you want to talk to me about? Tell me about it. I wonder if this black token belongs to young master or your father. Or your father's. The middle-aged man asked directly. Chapter 509. If it's yours, young master, I would like to discuss with young master and borrow young master's black token. Of course, I won't let young master suffer any losses. So long as young master names a price, I can rent it at a high price. Perhaps because he saw that Fingzhou was young, the middle-aged man actually spoke such words. As soon as he spoke, the person beside him and Manager Huang couldn't help but glance at him. Their lips moved, but they didn't say anything. Instead, their gazes fell on the young man in red. However, Fingzhou smiled when he heard this. He didn't answer the middle-aged man. Instead, he looked at Manager Huang and asked curiously, Can the black market's black tokens be rented out like this? Manager Huang smiled awkwardly. He glanced at the middle-aged man and then said to Fingzhou, Young master, the black market doesn't have such an example. As soon as he finished speaking, he said to the middle-aged man, You should go to the private room and wait for me. However, the middle-aged man slightly frowned. He glanced at Manager Huang and said, This matter is not impossible. As long as this young master agrees, it will become a private transaction. Moreover, I don't need a long time. 1 month is enough. Although they were black market's attendants, they generally carried out business outside. Their positions were different from those of the black market's attendants. If they had the convenience to obtain the black market's black tokens, he wouldn't have seized the opportunity before him. Actually, in his opinion, although the young man in red had an outstanding temperament, he was young and inexperienced. If he gave him enough benefits, he wasn't afraid that the young man wouldn't agree to this transaction. When she saw that the middle-aged man still didn't give up and wanted her black token, she curled her lips and looked at Manager Huang, Where's my black token? When he heard this, Manager Huang recalled that the black token was still in the hands of the middle-aged attendant. He hurriedly said, Brother Su, quickly return the black token to this young master. Old Su, return the black token to this young master. We can think of another way. The middle-aged man at the side said. After all, he knew that renting the black token wasn't appropriate. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, the middle-aged man surnamed Su glanced at Fingzhou and paused for a moment. He then took out a black token from his sleeve and handed it to Fingzhou, saying, This is the young master's black token. Please keep it well. Fingzhou glanced at the middle-aged man who had been staring at her face. She smiled and took the black token. However, when she took it, her eyes couldn't help but move slightly. She looked at the black token in her hand, raised her eyebrows and asked with a faint smile, "This is my black token?" Once those words were spoken, the expressions of the three people changed, especially Manager Huang. He quickly took it and looked at it. When he did, he could not help but be slightly stunned. He looked at the middle-aged man with the surname Su who had a tense expression. "Brother Su, this, you." The middle-aged man at the side frowned as well when he saw this. He glanced at the middle-aged man with the surname Su before glancing at the black command token in Manager Huang's hand, and he seemed to be lost in thought. "Young master, what do you mean? This isn't your black token. Could it be that it's fake?" The middle-aged man's face turned gloomy. The pressure of a golden core cultivator emanated from his body and enveloped Fingzhou. When she felt the pressure, Ling Shuang's already icy cold face became even colder. She glanced at her younger brother and saw that he was forcefully enduring the pressure without moving. However, his forehead was covered in cold sweat. When she saw this, she glanced at the middle-aged man. Chapter 5:10. However, contrary to everyone's expectations, Fingzhou did not fly into a rage, nor did she attack. Instead, she revealed a strange smile and took the black token from Manager Huang's hand. She looked at it and said, "Yes, look carefully. It seems to be mine." "That's right, this is a black token. Who would dare to fake it?" She smiled and stood up. Under the slightly surprised gazes of the others, she looked at Steward Huang and said, "Steward Huang, do you have time now? I have something I need your help with." "Young master, that black token." Manager Huang was stunned. He wanted to speak but was interrupted by Fingzhou. "Since you've seen the black token, it's fine." As she spoke, she looked at the two people at the side. "I say, shouldn't you two leave first? Since that's the case, we'll take our leave first." The middle-aged man with the surname Su said and walked out without waiting for Manager Huang to say anything. When the other middle-aged man saw this, he paused for a moment and also cupped his hands. His gaze paused on Fingzhou before he turned and left. Seeing the two people leave, Manager Huang opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. After a while, he turned his head and looked at Fingzhou. He sighed and didn't know what to say. He could only ask, "Young master, what is it that you need the black market's help with?" A real black token was actually replaced with a fake one after a trip to the black market. This was the first time he encountered such a thing. Moreover, he actually carried a fake black token with him. If he didn't report this matter, he was afraid that it would cause trouble in the future. Also, was this young man really stupid or was he pretending to be stupid? Was he just going to watch his black token being traded away? He clearly saw that it was not the original one, but he still smiled and accepted it. Could it be that he was frightened by his aura? He couldn't help but look at the young man with a smile on his face. He was puzzled. Fingzhou toyed with the black token in her hand. Her slightly curved lips had a strange smile that no one could guess. A calculating light flashed through her half-closed eyes. She was as cunning as a fox. How could she really suffer such a loss? "Steward Huang, I'm here to ask you to investigate a person for me." She smiled and looked at the steward who was worried. "May I know who young master wants to investigate?" With the power of the black market, not to mention investigating a person, it would not be a problem to investigate an entire clan. A woman called Su Shi. "I want to know where her family is, as well as everything related to her and her recent movements." When he heard this, Steward Huang's first thought was that this young man couldn't have stolen his father's black token to chase after the young lady, right? Thinking of the fake black token, he had a headache and said, "Young master, do you have a portrait of the girl you're looking for? Or what was his last name?" No matter how powerful the black market is, it won't be easy to find just a name. A portrait. She had a strange expression on her face. She didn't know how many years her grandfather had kept that painting of a beauty. The woman in the painting was probably about the same age as her grandfather now. It was useless even if she had seen the painting when she was young. Chapter 5:11. Hearing this, Manager Huang nodded. That's even better. Thus, he got someone to prepare a brush, ink, and paper for Fengjiu to draw the person. After a long while, Fengjiu handed the portrait to him and said, "I'll be staying here for a while." "Yes, I'll be staying at the Five Blessings Inn. If there's any news, send it there. Hurry up with this matter. I'll be waiting for it." "All right, I'll get someone to investigate right away." Manager Huang responded and walked out of the hall with the portrait. After instructing his subordinates, he handed the portrait to an old man and walked back into the hall. He looked at Fengjiu, who was sitting there and playing with the fake black token in his hand, and sighed inwardly. Just as he was about to speak, he was so frightened by the scene in front of him that his eyes widened. He saw that the young man had crushed the black token with one hand, and it directly turned into ashes that scattered all over the ground. Seeing this and his actions, Manager Huang immediately broke out in a cold sweat. He kept muttering in his heart, "It's over, it's over." He felt that this young man was not someone to be trifled with. Although that black token was fake, it was not made of ordinary materials. But now, it was directly crushed into powder by this young man. Fengjiu blew away the powder on his hands and took the wet cloth from Lang Hua to wipe his hands. Only then did he look at Manager Huang, whose eyes were wide with shock, and said with a smile, "Manager Huang, there's one more thing you have to report." "WH, what is it?" Manager Huang looked at the young man's fake smile and even stuttered a little when he spoke. Who could tell him what was going on with this young man whose aura had suddenly changed? What was going on with this young man who was exuding a powerful and intimidating aura? Just now, he was actually wondering if this young man had been frightened by old Sue's golden core aura. But now, looking at the aura and pressure emanating from his body, his legs were actually trembling. How terrifying. What a strange young man. Where did he come from? Actually, it's not a big deal. It's just that my black token was stolen. You can report it. Get someone to help me look for it. Steward Huang was dumbfounded. This young man turned around and did such a thing. Could it be that he had been waiting here for a long time? Hearing the carelessness in his voice, he couldn't help but wipe the cold sweat off his forehead. Young master, this matter. He wanted to say that all the black tokens in the black market were the same. If you lost it, there was no evidence. Other than reporting the loss, it wouldn't be easy to find the original one. Unexpectedly, before she could say anything, she heard the young man's voice again. By the way, I seem to have forgotten to tell you that apart from me, no one else can use my black token. What? Steward Huang cried out in shock and his face instantly turned pale. Initially, only his legs were trembling, but now, his entire body was trembling. Beads of cold sweat dripped down from his forehead. He looked in shock and horror at the young man who was smiling innocently in front of him. He could only feel his teeth chattering. That black token, if that black token was really as the young man in front of him said, that apart from him, no one else could use it, then that was a level 1 black token. However, he had only seen that it was a black token earlier and didn't notice that there was a level 1 mark on the black token. But now, looking at the young man's expression and hearing his tone, it was clearly a level 1 black token. A level 1 black token, with blood as the pattern. On that token, only the owner of the black token could activate the blood pattern. Chapter 5:12. Fengjiu was suddenly in a good mood when she saw how frightened Steward Huang was. She chuckled and teased, "It's a little expensive, but would you believe me if I said my surname is Ghost? Forget it, I won't talk to you about this anymore. Go and invite your president over. I'll talk to him." She seemed to have only used the 2 words "ghost doctor" when she registered. Actually, when she first received this black token, it was indeed just an ordinary black token, a black token that could allow the black market to treat her as a VIP. However, after she came into contact with President Ku of the Enchanting Kingdom's black market, he knew that she had a black token and said that he helped her apply for a first-class black token, saying that she would have more privileges and better treatment. However, she didn't pay much attention to it. After all, it was just a token and she didn't really care about it. She didn't expect to encounter such a problem here. She originally thought that it would be enough to leave the investigation to the black market steward and didn't want to alert the black market's president. However, she didn't expect that someone would have designs on her black token. Who dared to snatch something from her? How interesting. Steward Huang's face turned pale. He was the black market steward and he was usually in charge of the black market's affairs. However, he was the one who was in charge of the black market. The person above him was the president. If he knew about this, he really didn't dare to imagine what the consequences would be. However, the young man in front of him had already revealed his identity as a first-class black token holder. Even if he was the black market steward, he didn't have the right to receive him. Thinking of this, he swallowed his saliva and said in a trembling voice, young master, please have a seat. I'll immediately send someone to invite the president." The black market's president usually didn't come out to manage matters because they spent most of their time cultivating. Unless there was something serious that the steward couldn't handle, they would only come out. However, in this case, only the president could come out. He didn't dare to send someone to invite the president. Instead, he went to invite the president personally. He hurried to the president's independent courtyard where he cultivated. He stood guard outside the courtyard and let the guard pass on an urgent matter. Not long after, a man in a gray robe who looked to be about 50 years old walked out. This person was the president of the Dian's black market, a nascent soul cultivator who exuded the aura of a powerful cultivator. "What's going on?" His face was solemn as he glanced at Manager Huang. His voice was dignified and carried the pressure of an expert. The moment he opened his mouth, it caused one's heart to tremble slightly. Upon seeing him, Manager Huang's legs trembled and he immediately knelt down with a plop. He said in a panic, "President. I am in big trouble. President, please save me." Hearing this, his frown deepened, but he didn't let him get up. Instead, he asked, "Tell me clearly." Therefore, Steward Huang did not dare to hide anything and told him about how the 2 men came to look for him and how the red-clothed youth had exchanged a black order with him. At this point, he had a long face and his face was filled with panic. I really didn't know that the Black Order was a level 1 Black Order. Things like level 1 Black Order are extremely rare and I never thought that it would appear in the Great Yen Dynasty. Moreover, the person who owned it was a youth. A red-clothed youth. After hearing Steward Huang's description, a hint of surprise appeared in the president's eyes. It was as if he had thought of something. His expression became a little excited as he hurriedly asked, "Where is that young man now?" If you see a cultivator surnamed Su with a grade 1 black token, capture him and bring him back. Once the order was given, the 2 of them respectfully responded and instantly disappeared. Only then did Chairman Ko look at the red-clothed Fingzhou, saying, "I heard that the ghost doctor is currently staying at the 5 Blessings Inn. How could staying in an inn be more comfortable than staying in the black market? Why don't the ghost doctor move into the black market? There are plenty of empty courtyards in the black market. It's quiet and comfortable to stay here. It'll also allow this Ko to play the role of a host and properly entertain the ghost doctor." No need, it's more convenient to stay in an inn. She waved her hand and stood up, saying, I've already wasted quite a bit of time here. It's already quite late, so I'll take my leave first. Hearing that, Chairman Cook hurriedly stood up to send her off, saying, I'll send the ghost doctor off. That's right, ghost doctor, don't worry. I'll get them to speed up the investigation. We must satisfy the ghost doctor in the shortest time possible. Chapter 5:14. He knew her identity from Enchanting country's President Ku and was familiar with her. Naturally, he knew that she could concoct pills and make medicine. Looking at his expression, it was most likely that he was either asking for pills or medicine. She'd better pretend she didn't see it. Seeing Fengjiu walk out and ignore his hesitant expression, President Ku couldn't help but smile bitterly. This ghost doctor's personality was just as his clan brother said, strange, but also wise and far-sighted. He clearly knew what he was thinking, but didn't say anything or expose him. He just pretended he didn't see it and walked away. Only he could do such a thing. Sighing softly in his heart, he followed behind to send them out. He originally wanted to speak, but felt that it wasn't good to ask for pills the first time they met. Now that he knew where he lived, he resisted the urge and changed his visit to the 5 Blessings Inn early in the morning. When the people of the black market saw that it was actually the president who personally sent the red-clothed youth out, they couldn't help but look at them, secretly guessing the red-clothed youth's identity. At this time, Feng Nine, who had arrived at the entrance of the black market, stopped and said to President Ku, you can call me young Master Feng. As for my identity and my whereabouts, I don't want others to know. Hearing this, President Ku hurriedly replied, Yes, 9th young master, don't worry. I know what to do. Fengjiu nodded. Seeing that the sky outside had darkened, he thought of the man she had forgotten in the inn and couldn't help but feel guilty. He hurriedly brought Ling Shuang and Leng Hua back. President Ku watched his figure disappear on the street before turning back, secretly thinking, how can I ask for the ghost doctor's pills? He had been stuck in the 2nd level of nascent soul for a long time and only lacked a pill that could help him break through. He had heard that the ghost doctor was good at this type of pill. But it wouldn't be easy to ask for pills. His personality was strange. Take today's matter as an example. If he had revealed his identity early on, none of this would have happened. However, he just watched and allowed the situation to develop. As a result, the cultivator with the surname Su who exchanged his black token would have to suffer. He didn't need to personally teach the ghost doctor a lesson, their black market would have to give him an explanation. This kind of method, this kind of scheming, made him understand for the first time what his clan brother meant when he said that the ghost doctor's personality was strange. Meanwhile, in the inn, the Yama Lord's chilling aura was enough to turn the temperature of the room from summer to winter. Looking at his master who was sitting at the table and drinking who knows how much tea, Grey Wolf did not dare to open his mouth, nor did he dare to relax. Chapter 5:15. It's getting late, I think she should be back soon. As Ying Yi spoke, he glanced at his master downstairs and walked down as well. Hearing this, Wei Lang glanced at the sky outside and muttered, I'm just afraid that she's having too much fun outside and has forgotten that master is still waiting for her at the inn. He thought to himself, AI. With these two like this, why don't they just stay in the same room? That way, if the ghost doctor goes out, master will be the first to know. As he walked down, he kept looking outside. When he reached the 1st floor, he didn't stay by his master's side. Instead, he waited outside to see if the ghost doctor would appear on the main street. Waiting for someone was the most stressful thing. It wasn't a long time, but it felt like time was passing very slowly. A long time had passed, but the person they were waiting for still hadn't returned. Looking at his master who was sitting there drinking wine, Grey Wolf beckoned the waiter over and asked him to serve a few dishes for his master. After waiting for about half the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn, when he saw a red figure appear in his line of sight, Hui Lang cheered and immediately turned to shout to his master inside, "Master, the 9th young master is back." His joyful expression and tone, as well as his words, caused the guests who were drinking and chatting on the first floor of the inn to look back in surprise and curiosity. Because he looked like he was shouting, "Master, the madam is back." But the person he was shouting was the 9th young master, a man. "Master, Hui Lang seems to be waiting for us." Lang Hua saw Hui Lang at the entrance of the inn from afar and was a little surprised that he was waiting there. But thinking about it, perhaps it wasn't him who was waiting for them, but rather the Yama Lord who was waiting for his master. Feng Jiu weighed the things in his hands and couldn't help but laugh. "I'm guessing that arrogant fellow is throwing a tantrum again." Hearing this, Lang Hua looked at each other and smiled. Yes, the Yama Lord was such a cold and domineering person, but when he met their master, it was as if he changed into a different person. What narrow-mindedness, what arrogance, all of these could be seen in him. Hui Lang was right, only when he was with his master would be more like a human. When they arrived at the entrance of the inn, they saw the figure sitting on the first floor even before they entered. Seeing this, Feng Jiu's eyes slightly moved. Hui Lang, who was beside him, and whispered, "9th young master, you're back. My master has been waiting for you." Feng Nine smiled and walked towards Ling Mohan after glancing at Grey Wolf. She called out to him with a smile, "Uncle, look what I brought back for you." She weighed the things in her hands, and her beautiful eyes narrowed into crescents as she looked at the man who was drinking alone. As soon as he heard that she had brought something for him, Ling Mohan's deep eyes flashed with a faint light. He almost couldn't restrain himself from turning back to look at that person and the thing she had brought back for him. However, when he thought that she had gone out without calling him, his heart was filled with anger. Therefore, he ignored her and continued to drink. "Uncle, you're not angry, are you?" She bent down beside him and tilted her head slightly to look at him with a smile. Seeing that his handsome face was still covered by his beard, she explained, "I went out to do something. See, I came back with something for you." Chapter 5:16. Feng Jiu sat down beside him and looked at him with one hand supporting her chin. She smiled and said, "I heard from Hui Lang that you like to eat a few pieces of walnut pastry. When I came back, I saw a pastry shop and bought some for you. Try them and see how they taste." Hearing her words, he finally could not help but look at her. His heart failed to live up to his expectations, and his faintly beating joy caused the icy aura on his body to disappear in an instant. Grey Wolf and Shadow, who were watching from the side, were speechless. They knew that the ghost doctor specialized in curing the cold air around their master. As long as she was around, even winter could turn into spring. Looking at this transformation, they were simply too surprised. But thinking about it, it was normal. Who asked their master to be so infatuated with the ghost doctor? Sigh. He had unknowingly fallen into the ghost doctor's love net and was willingly entangled. Humph. Don't think that you can get rid of me with a few pieces of walnut pastry. If you don't explain clearly, see how I'll deal with you. She obviously couldn't hide her joy, but her face was still proud. As she spoke, she opened the packet of walnut pastry and picked up a piece to eat. The guests on the first floor listened to their conversation and looked at their expressions. Their expressions couldn't help but become strange. One by one, they looked at the two of them, but no one knew what they were thinking. "I haven't eaten dinner yet. Let's talk while we eat," she said with a smile and picked up her chopsticks to eat. Seeing this, Ling Mohan glanced at Hui Lang and said, "Give her a bowl of rice and ask the waiter to add a few more dishes." He paused and glanced at her small body and said, add meat dishes and a stew. Yes. Hui Lang grinned and hurriedly asked the waiter to quickly bring a few more dishes. He then ran to the kitchen and brought out a small bowl of white rice for them. Fengjiu said as she ate, I just went to the black market and asked them to help me find out where to find my grandfather. I was delayed by some matters, otherwise I would have come back long ago. Hearing this, Ling Mohan raised his wine glass and took a sip. He didn't say anything else. Initially, he had instructed Hui Lang to send someone to investigate, but before he could tell her, she had run off on her own. Looking at her eating with great appetite, he put down the wine glass and picked up the chopsticks to give her a piece of meat. Eat more meat, you are too thin. Fengjiu ignored him and buried her head in her food. She felt that it would be better to quickly finish eating and return to her room to rest. She couldn't stand his burning gaze. After the meal, she hurriedly said, It's been a tiring day. Uncle, you should rest early too. I'll go back to my room first. See you tomorrow. As soon as she finished speaking, she didn't wait for him to say anything and went straight to her room on the second floor. Seeing the woman's fleeing figure, Ling Mohan snorted coldly, but didn't say anything. Instead, he picked up the bag of walnut cakes she brought back and went to the second floor. Seeing that they had all gone up, the guests downstairs began to discuss. The way that man looked at the young man was really strange. Yes, that's the way he looks at women. But that young man is really good-looking. But the relationship between the two of them is not ordinary. Do you think, could they be gay? Ing, who was guarding the door of the room on the second floor, heard the conversation downstairs and the corner of his mouth twitched. He was speechless. The next morning, when President Cook personally came to the inn with a generous gift, he was told that the person he was looking for had left early in the morning. Chapter 5:17. There doesn't seem to be many people here. She looked at the door of the guild that was completely empty. From the outside, it was very quiet inside, and there were only a few people walking around. Ling Mohan glared at her. Do you think pharmacists are cabbages? That they can be found anywhere? Hearing this, she smiled embarrassedly and asked, I'll go in. You guys find a place to wait for me. There was a tea house over there when I came over just now. I'll go find you after I'm done with the assessment. Okay. Knowing that the assessment would take a few hours, Ling Mohan agreed and gave some instructions. Then, he led Hui Lang and Ing Yi to the tea house. You two follow them. You don't have to wait here. It'll take a few hours. She gestured for Ling Shuang and Ling Hua to follow them to the tea house. Yes. The two of them responded. Because the tea house was not far from here, they could see the main door of the Pharmacists' Guild from the second floor. Therefore, they also went to the tea house. At this time, Fengjiu walked into the Pharmacists' Guild. After entering, she found a pharmacist who was in charge of reception and told him the purpose of her visit. You're here for the badge assessment? The pharmacist looked Fengjiu up and down, then pointed to a counter on the other side. Go over there and pay the assessment fee first, then come back to get a number. Because the pharmacist badge assessment required the use of spiritual herbs, every pharmacist who took the assessment had to pay a corresponding fee for each level of pharmacist. Knowing this, Fengjiu quickly paid the fee and took the voucher to the pharmacist to get a number. Go inside and wait. You came early, so you got the first number. The pharmacist said indifferently and handed her a wooden card. People came to take the assessment every day, but very few people could pass. This young man was only 15 or 16 years old. He didn't even see how much she had paid and which level of pharmacist badge she wanted to take the assessment. He just gave her a number and sent her away. In his opinion, this young man would not be able to pass the exam, so he did not give him a good attitude. Fengjiu didn't think much of it. She took the number plate and walked inside. When she arrived, she saw that it was a large stone room. There was a pharmacist standing outside. When he saw her come in, he looked her up and down. "You're here for the assessment?" "Wait a moment, the person in charge of the assessment hasn't arrived yet." Hearing this, she nodded. She had never been here before. Taking advantage of the fact that it was still early, she looked around and smelled the faint medicinal fragrance in the air. Her gaze fell on the closed stone door in front of her. She thought to herself, is the assessment inside? Wasn't the ceiling done too well? Is there any light inside? After the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, more than 10 people came in one after another. They were all holding wooden tokens and waiting to be tested. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, the pharmacist in charge of the test finally entered the stone room. "Bring in the number 1 pill." The apothecary guarding the stone door shouted. Everyone looked over and saw a handsome young man in a dazzling red robe handing over his wooden token with a smile. "I'm number 1. At this moment, Fengjiu was in a good mood. Waking up early in the morning was the right choice. At least she was the first person to take the assessment. "Go in." The apothecary took her wooden token and opened the stone door to let her in. As soon as she stepped inside, Fengjiu's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. From the outside, it looked like a sealed stone room. However, when she entered, she realized that other than the 4 walls surrounding the room, there was only a blue sky and white clouds above. Chapter 5:18. The 3 examiners inside glanced at the newcomer and saw that it was a young red-clothed youth. He looked around curiously as soon as he entered the apothecary guild. It was obvious that this was his first time in the apothecary guild. Seeing this, one of the examiners coughed lightly and said, "Come and register." "What's your name? How old are you?" The examiners only needed to register their name and age. The name was a code, but the age was not. They needed to know the age of each examiner, as well as the rank of the apothecary they were being tested for, so that the apothecaries could easily calculate. At this moment, Fengjiu's gaze also fell on the 3 examiners. Seeing that they were 2 middle-aged men and an old man, he walked forward and bowed, a pure and harmless smile on his handsome face. "Greetings, examiners. My name is Fengjiu, and I'm 16 years old this year." The 3 examiners saw that the youth in front of them had a handsome appearance, a clear and energetic voice, and a face that was full of ignorance. However, he was well-mannered and had a sense of propriety. They all nodded inwardly, thinking that this child should be a descendant of a noble family. After the middle-aged man wrote down the name and age, he pointed to a stone door behind him and said, "That's the elixir room. There are all kinds of elixirs. You need to identify the elixirs and choose the herbs yourself. Once you've chosen the herbs you need, go to the refining table over there to refine your medicine." Fengjiu looked in the direction he pointed and nodded, "Okay." Only then did he walk towards the stone door. When he pushed open the stone door, he saw that it was another world inside. Although it was called the elixir room, he still had to walk nearly 10 meters to reach the elixir room. Rather than calling it a room, it was more appropriate to call it a 3-story building. There was a small square table in front of the building, and an old man was sitting there, dozing off with his hand supporting his chin. Perhaps it was because he heard footsteps that he opened his eyes. "Show me the proof of payment." The old man glanced at Fengjiu and tapped his finger on the table. Hearing this, Fengjiu took out the payment receipt from earlier and handed it over. He thought to himself that there were a lot of troublesome things to deal with, and it took a lot of effort to deal with them. The old man looked at the payment date. When he saw the amount, his eyes widened. He rubbed his eyes, thinking that he had seen wrongly. However, when he looked again, it was still the same number. He could not help but raise his head in astonishment and look at the red-clothed young man in front of him. "Go in." He handed the voucher back to Fingzhou, and stared at her with a strange gaze until she went inside. Then, he whispered, "The fee is actually the highest level. What rank of badge did this youngster take the exam?" After entering the building, Fingzhou felt that there was an expert's divine sense shrouding the three-story building. It was as if there was a pair of eyes watching everything inside. She did not care. She took out a basket and picked some elixirs that she needed. In less than half an incense stick's time, she came out with 2 baskets of elixirs. Seeing the youngster leave with 2 baskets of elixirs, the old man sitting at the table stared blankly. So many elixirs, and they were not ordinary elixirs. Even if he paid the fee again, he would not be able to make up for it. The guild's fees were divided into 3 levels. Generally, those who came to take the exam for the badge would choose the best ones. Even the medicine sect would not have more than 50 elixirs. However, that youngster just went in and came out with 2 baskets in less than half an incense stick's time. Chapter 5:19. The 3 people in the examination room sat and chatted. Normally, there would only be about 10 to 20 people taking the examination every day. Although some people would need 2 to 3 hours to complete the examination, there would also be some people who would run into problems in the middle of the concoction process and were unable to continue. Therefore, there were people who failed the examination in less than half an incense stick's time. Therefore, the examination was a very leisurely affair for them. Because they were chatting, there were smiles on their faces. When they heard the sound coming from the stone door, they instinctively glanced over. However, when they saw the red-clothed youth carrying 2 baskets full of spiritual herbs in his hands, the smiles on their faces froze. They all widened their eyes and stood up with a whoosh. Just seeing the expensive spiritual herbs in the baskets made them dumbfounded. Those were spiritual herbs from the 3rd floor. Why did he bring them here? There were so many spiritual herbs, and they were all aged. Any one of them was not something that the fee he paid could compare to. Therefore, someone couldn't help but ask. "Fingzhou, what are you taking so many spiritual herbs for?" Hearing this, Fingzhou looked at the examiner who asked the question in astonishment. He naturally replied, "To refine medicine." If he wasn't going to refine medicine, what was he taking so many for? Wasn't this a pointless question? However, this pharmacist guild was really not bad. Compared to the spiritual herbs in the baskets, the fee he paid was not even worth mentioning. Hearing the youth's matter-of-fact words and seeing the youth's expression that clearly said he was asking a pointless question, a few veins appeared on his forehead. The corner of his mouth twitched and he said again, "So many spiritual herbs, can you refine them all? You have to know that although you paid the fee, you can't waste the spiritual herbs. You can only take the spiritual herbs that you need for the medicine you want to refine. If you waste the spiritual herbs that you clearly don't need, you will have to buy them at 10 times the price." She frowned, "But I need them all." As she spoke, she had already carried the 2 baskets of spiritual herbs to the refining table. Seeing this, the other 2 examiners finally couldn't bear it and shouted, "You need them? How are you going to use them? Do you know the names and medicinal properties of those spiritual herbs? 2 baskets of spirit herbs, and all of them are aged. This is no joke." Perhaps thinking of something, Fingzhou, who was originally frowning, looked up at them with a strange expression and asked, "3 examiners, do you know what badge I'm here for? Isn't it just a pharmacist's badge?" One of them said. They hadn't asked him anything since he came in, but looking at this young man's age, he should be taking the examination for the pharmacist badge. The 2 examiners at the side glanced at the youth, then glanced at the 2 baskets full of aged spirit herbs. They shook their heads and picked up the teacups on the table, intending to drink some water to calm down. This was the first time this young man had come to take the test. He didn't even understand the rules here, so don't expect him to pass the test. One had to know that even for a pharmacist, it wasn't that easy to get a badge. Hearing this, Fengzhou grinned, revealing a dazzling smile, and said in a light tone, "No. I'm here to take the Medicine Saint's badge." Pooh. Cough cough. Chapter 520. Fengzhou blinked innocently and said seriously, "I'm really here to take the Medicine Sage examination. The fee I'm paying is also the fee for the Medicine Sage examination." Could it be that they thought she was here to play because she was young? The examiner who had helped Fengzhou register looked at Fengzhou disapprovingly. However, when he saw the youth's innocent and serious expression, he calmed down and asked in a low voice, "Do you have the Medicine Master's badge?" Fengzhou shook her head, "No." "Then what about the Medicine Master's badge?" "No." She shook her head again. Displeasure appeared on the examiner's face, but he still asked, "Then what about the Medicine Master's badge?" "I don't have it either. I haven't taken the examination, this is my first time at the Pharmacists' Association." Although she knew how to refine medicine, she really didn't have those badges. If she did, why would she have come all the way here? When they heard Fengzhou's words, the other two examiners couldn't help but say angrily, "You're not even a medicine master, why are you taking the Medicine Sage examination? You're still saying you're not crazy. You're clearly crazy about becoming a medicine sage. Wasting our time so early in the morning, you get out right now." Fengzhou wasn't angry at all, perhaps because she understood their feelings. She felt that it was normal for them to feel this way. After all, wanting to take the Medicine Sage examination without a Medicine Master's badge was indeed a little whimsical. Thus, she smiled good-naturedly and her eyes sparkled. "Examiners, don't be too hot-tempered so early in the morning, it's bad for your health. You should at least listen to what I have to say." Seeing their stares, she didn't wait for them to speak and continued, "Although it's true that I don't have a Medicine Master's badge that represents my identity, I am indeed a Medicine Master. As for why I directly took the Medicine Sage's badge, that's because I feel that I have the ability to obtain the badge and become a Medicine Sage. Otherwise, these rounds of examinations would waste my time." Hearing this, the three examiners who were already burning with anger became even angrier. They felt that this youth was too ridiculous. He actually dared to boast in a place like the Apothecary Guild, and even said that the tests were a waste of his time. Originally, they had thought that this young man's appearance was outstanding, and he was courteous and courteous. But now, looking at him again, they had never seen anyone worse than him. "Good. Let's see how you refine medicine at the level of an alchemy saint. But let me tell you something first. If you waste the 2 baskets of elixirs you brought, you'll have to buy them at 10 times the price." Fengzhou rubbed her nose innocently. She was just telling the truth, but she didn't expect the 3 of them to be even angrier than before. Sigh. She was innocent too, okay? Although she would be staying here for a while, she still had time. However, she didn't want to waste her time in this guild. Thus, she checked the items on the medicine refining platform and saw that the equipment was enough to refine normal medicine. However, to refine medicine that could represent the level of a medicine saint, it was too inferior. Thus, she looked at the 3 of them. "The equipment is too low. Please change it to the equipment of the medicine saint." Hearing this, the 3 of them could only stare helplessly and were speechless. But at this moment, an aged voice sounded. "Change it to the equipment of the medicine saint and have Elder Yu come over to supervise the examination." Chapter 521. Fengzhou's eyes flickered. He did not raise his head as he fiddled with the spirit herbs in the basket. The corners of his lips curled into a smile. Because of the Grand Elder's words, the three examiners did not dare to say anything else. They quickly changed into the medicine saint's equipment, and one of them personally went to invite Elder Yu. Elder Yu was a medicine saint in the Apothecary Association. His status was extraordinary. It was difficult to find 10 medicine saints in 100 third-rate countries. Hence, one could imagine how rare medicine saints were. This was also why they were so angry when they heard Fingzhou say that he wanted to take the medicine saint examination. They did not think that this young man had the ability to take the medicine saint examination. They even thought that his words were an insult to the medicine saint's dignity. A 16-year-old medicine saint. That was simply impossible. Among the people waiting outside for the examination, there were many apothecaries, Grandmaster apothecaries, and even Grandmaster apothecaries who came to take the medicine saint examination. There was no one above that. After all, medicine saints were extremely rare. At this moment, they saw the door to the stone room open and the examiners inside hurriedly came out. Because of the isolation of the formation, they could not hear what was happening inside. They could only discuss in low voices. Not long after, when they saw the examiner who had come out earlier respectfully following behind an old man, some people who recognized the old man's identity were so excited that their faces flushed red. They all wanted to go forward and greet him, but they were blocked by the guards beside the old man. When the old man and the examiners entered the stone room, those who recognized the old man were so excited that they were incoherent. That's Medicine Saint Yu. He's the only medicine saint in the entire Great Yen dynasty. I've seen him from afar once. I heard that Medicine Saint Yu usually lives in seclusion. I didn't expect to see him here today. That's right. I've also seen him from afar once. But why is he here? This is the examination room. Could it be that someone can make him personally take the examination? Although another person was excited, he noticed something unusual. The one who went in was a red-robed young man. He looks to be around 15 or 16 years old. He's probably here to take the Medicine Saint examination. It's impossible for him to disturb Medicine Saint Yu. Perhaps there's something else. While the crowd outside was discussing, Fingzhou was looking at the new equipment in satisfaction. This was the Medicine Saint's medicine refining equipment. She took out the spirit herbs from the basket and placed them neatly. Then, she heard an old but vigorous voice. Young friend, your name is Fengzhou. Fengzhou's eyes and saw a gray-robed elder. He had a head of silver hair and his face was rosy. He was full of spirit and his wise eyes as he sized her up. She smiled and replied, yes. I heard that you're taking the Medicine Saint's badge. The old man smiled. He did not look down on him, nor was he surprised. He only asked calmly, as if he was an old friend who had known him for a long time. His expression was natural, and his tone was gentle. She nodded, her bright eyes falling on the old man. Since that's the case, I'll invigilate for you. The elder smiled warmly and retreated to the invigilator's seat. He gestured to Fingzhou. The medicine saint has 4 hours to refine medicine. Young friend, please refine medicine in 4 hours. As long as the medicine meets the standard of a medicine saint, I'll personally put the medicine saint's badge on you. Chapter 522. The 3 examiners glanced at Elder Yu and were puzzled. Even though Elder Yu was kind and amiable, but that red-clothed youth was only a 16-year-old youth. To be able to receive such courteous treatment from him, they really could not understand. Moreover, from Elder Yu's words and his attitude, he seemed to think that the youth could really refine medicine at the level of a medicine saint. Moreover, he was only a 16-year-old youth, yet he actually alarmed the Grand Elder. At this moment, needless to say, they knew that the Grand Elder was also secretly observing the assessment here. Hence, they gathered their thoughts and looked towards the red-robed youth. With this look, astonishment flashed across their eyes. The red-robed youth's movements of handling the spirit herbs were extremely skillful, neither fast nor slow, extremely elegant. Thinking of this, a strange expression surfaced on their faces. Elegant? Why would they think so? Although they felt that these two words should not appear here, but the youth's movements, expressions, and mannerisms all revealed a sense of elegance. The entire scene was a pleasing painting. The red-robed youth's appearance was handsome, his expression focused, yet his movements revealed elegance. Every raise of his hand, every movement, and every stroke of his red sleeves was like a painting, inexplicably calming one's heart. What Elder Yu noticed was different from what the three examiners noticed. What Elder Yu noticed was the way Feng Zhou handled the elixirs, as well as the order in which he concocted the elixirs. What he noticed was the concentration in his expression, as well as the confidence he had in his heart. His gaze swept across the spirit herbs on the table, and his gaze moved slightly. What kind of medicine was he going to refine? From Feng Zhou's methods, he could tell that he was indeed a pharmacist, but he did not know what level of medicine he could refine. To be able to catch the Grand Elder's attention, this youth was not simple. As time passed, the spirit herbs were processed, and Feng Zhou began to extract the essence of the spirit herbs. If it was refining pills, she really did not have the confidence to succeed in one try. But medicine, that was something she had played with since she was young, so it was not difficult for her at all. However, her method of refining medicine was different from what they had estimated. The pharmacists here extracted the medicinal liquid from the medicine, but she extracted the essence of the spiritual herbs. Just this point alone made the medicine she refined different. When Elder Yu saw that Feng Zhou's method of extracting the medicinal liquid was different from what he had expected, doubt flashed across his eyes. Then, he saw that Feng Zhou had actually casually poured all the medicinal liquids he had extracted into it. After going through layers upon layers of steps, in the end, only half a cup of light green medicinal liquid was extracted. Feng Zhou did not care that they were watching, nor was she afraid that they would learn her technique. She only focused on the work at hand. About 4 hours later, she placed the extracted essences on the table and prepared for the final fusion step. Elder Yu was frowning as he looked at the light green medicinal liquid in the transparent bottles. It was strange that Feng Zhou had extracted a different green medicinal liquid from theirs. Just as he was thinking, he saw the youth randomly mixing the remaining 20 over cups of medicinal liquid together. That casual action caused his gaze to shrink. He felt that if those medicinal liquids were mixed together, there would definitely be a reaction of repulsion. This medicine was probably ruined. Chapter 523. Smelling the dense medicinal fragrance that made one's mind tremble, Elder Yu suddenly jolted. His eyes widened in shock, and he instantly stood up. He looked in disbelief at the young man who was slowly stirring the medicinal liquid. His eyes stared in disbelief at the medicinal liquid that did not explode due to the incompatibility of the medicinal properties. How was this possible? How did he do it? Mixing the medicinal liquid in like that, why didn't the medicinal properties repel each other? Was there anything that he had missed? He actually couldn't see where the problem was. Similar to Elder Yu, the three examiners at the side were also dumbfounded. However, they were not dumbfounded because Feng Zhou's medicinal liquid did not repel each other, because that kind of refining method and steps were already not something they could understand. What they were dumbfounded about was the medicinal fragrance that they smelled. They didn't think that this young man could really refine medicine. Although the dense medicinal fragrance wafted out, Feng Zhou did not stop. Instead, he paid attention to the medicinal liquid, and continued to extract the final essence using the distillation method. Time gradually passed, and the dense medicinal fragrance that permeated the air gradually faded. It clearly did not have the previous dense medicinal fragrance, but that refreshing scent seemed to have become purer. Elder Yu watched as Fingzhou took out the final medicinal liquid from the distiller, and watched as he took out 2 transparent bottles from his sleeves, and stored the faint green medicinal liquid. Seeing this, he hurriedly walked over, and arrived in front of the refining platform. "All right, please examine it." She took out a bottle for Elder Yu to examine. From the beginning to the end, Elder Yu clearly understood that this young man was a medicine saint. That kind of technique was impeccable, and he seemed to have grasped the knowledge of refining medicine that even he did not understand. Looking at the medicinal liquid in front of him, he could even be sure that this was a medicinal liquid that could be compared to the spiritual liquid. Moreover, he had only used less than 6 hours to complete the refinement. This speed was also out of his expectations. Suppressing the shock and excitement in his heart, he took out a small tube of liquid medicine and compared it. He evaluated it from its color and smell. Finally, he looked at Fingzhou and asked in an excited voice, "Young friend, may I ask what kind of miraculous effect this medicine has?" "This is a bottle of medicinal liquid that can help with cultivation breakthroughs. I've added 2 types of medicine, so you have to be at least a Golden Core Realm cultivator or a Martial Emperor Realm Xian martial artist to take it. It depends on each person's situation. I can't say for sure," she said with a shrug. In any case, she knew that the amount of liquid medicine she took out was enough. Old Yu's eyes lit up as he held the liquid, but he didn't say a word for a long time. The 3 people at the side could not help but ask, "Elder Yu, is this extreme or not? Is the color and smell right?" Hearing this, Elder Yu finally regained his senses. He looked at Fingzhou as if he was looking at a glowing treasure, his eyes filled with excitement and agitation. "Good, good, good. Good. A young medicine saint like this, young friend, not to mention these hundreds of third-class countries. I'm afraid that even those second-class countries have never produced one. Young friend is really a natural genius, a natural genius." Hearing this, the 3 examiners were instantly dumbfounded, and their jaws almost dropped to the ground. This young man, actually reached the level of a medicine saint. Chapter 524. Hearing him call her little friend to little brother Feng, Fingzhou expressed that it was very stressful to address an old man who was hundreds of years old as little brother. But luckily, this Elder Yu didn't give her a bad feeling, so she felt relieved after thinking about it. He called her little brother because he thought highly of her. After all, when he called her little brother, it meant that he treated her as an equal. But she was a girl, all right. The word little brother really didn't suit her. So, she smiled and said, "Elder, you can just call me Xiaozhou." "Ha ha ha, good, then I'll call you Xiaozhou." He laughed heartily. The more he looked at her, the more satisfied he was, and said, "Xiaozhou, let's go to the main hall to talk, please." Fingzhou nodded, and walked out with him. The 3 examiners were stunned, and only regained their senses after a while. The 3 of them looked at each other, and hurriedly followed out, leaving the examination work to the other 3 pharmacists of the guild. When the crowd who had been waiting outside for half a day saw Elder Yu and the red-clothed youth walking out while talking and laughing, they all widened their eyes in disbelief. But they couldn't get close, and could only watch as the few of them walked further and further away. "Who's that youth?" "That youth is the first person to go in for the examination. Looks like he passed." Even if he passed, Elder Yu and the other 3 examiners don't have that kind of attitude, right? Could it be that the youth's family background is very strong? Once these words were said, it immediately attracted the disdainful gazes of the crowd. No matter how strong the family background is, the medicine saint wouldn't care about it. You have to know, even those from the royal family have to curry favor with him. Why would he need to curry favor with others? The others nodded. That's right, whether it was a pharmacist or a pill refiner, they were all highly respected. No matter how strong a person's cultivation was, they couldn't leave a pharmacist or a pill refiner in their life. Furthermore, no matter how strong a person's cultivation was, they usually wouldn't have bad relations with pharmacists or pill refiners. The guild hall was the place where guests were received. Even the pharmacists who came for the examination were not allowed to enter. Today, Fengjiu was led here by his old friend. The apothecaries secretly sized up Fengjiu while they were serving tea and pastries. They were curious as to why Elder Yu thought so highly of this red-clothed youth. However, they didn't dare to stay. After the tea and pastries were served, they retreated. No wonder even the Supreme Elder noticed you. Hee, such talent is indeed rare in the world. You must be from a medical family, right? Elder Yu stroked his beard and smiled as he looked at Fengjiu. He was thinking about how to rope this young man in. If he could become a guest elder of their alchemist association, it would be extremely beneficial to their alchemist association. Fengjiu smiled, but did not intend to elaborate. He only asked, Elder Yu, is my assessment considered complete? The assessment is complete. You only need to drip your blood into the badge to verify it. Elder Yu chuckled as he spoke. His voice paused, and he said, Xiao Zhou, I have something to discuss with you. Please speak, Elder Yu. She lifted the teacup and took a sip of tea. Do you want to sell the medicinal liquid you refined? I can represent the guild to purchase it from you. I can definitely give you a satisfactory price. Chapter 525. Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled, put down the teacup in his hand, and looked at him. I'm really sorry, my medicine is usually only auctioned. Moreover, I don't have any plans to sell it. As for the guest elder, her voice paused, and she smiled. I'm just passing by, and I won't stay here for too long. I'll go back once I'm done with my business, so forget it. She came to the pharmacist guild just to get a badge and get a certificate. She didn't plan to be a guest elder or something like that. It was too troublesome, and she hated trouble the most. But this guest elder position is only a name that he still wanted to persuade her, but who knew that Fengjiu waved his hand. Elder Yu, you don't have to say more. I'm only here to get a badge today. I really don't want to be a guest elder. Hearing this, even Elder Yu's mouth couldn't help but twitch. He was speechless and didn't know how to persuade her anymore. If it were an ordinary person, they would be extremely excited when they heard that they were going to be a guest elder of the Pharmacist Guild. Only this eccentric young man was disdainful. He had been in the Pharmacist Guild for so many years, but this was the first time he saw such a freak. Elder Yu, the badge is here. The three examiners walked out. At this moment, their gazes fell on the young man in red, and they felt like they were dreaming. This young man really got the Medicine Saint's badge. Moreover, Medicine Saint, even they had to respectfully call her Medicine Saint Feng in front of him. Elder Yu looked at the young man, then took the badge and told Fengjiu how to authenticate the badge. After a series of procedures, he looked at him and sighed, then asked, Xiao Zhou, you really don't want to reconsider? There are many benefits to being a guest elder of our pharmacist guild. When he said this, his old face couldn't help but turn red. He never thought that there would be a day where he would have to use such a method to coax a youth into becoming their guild's guest elder. However, it would be fine if this method worked, but the youth just had to be completely uninterested in the position of guest elder. It was really a headache. However, Fengjiu kept the badge that had been authenticated, then smiled. Elder Yu, I'm really just passing by. I won't stay here for long. I appreciate Elder Yu's good intentions, but my friends are still waiting for me outside. I'll take my leave first. There was a smile in her eyes. She was very happy to get the Medicine Saint's badge. However, when she cupped her hands and was about to leave, her footsteps paused. She turned around to look at Elder Yu and said, "Elder Yu, please keep the matter of me being the medicine saint a secret. Especially my name, I do not wish for it to spread." Hearing this, several people in the hall glared at him. "Don't spread. Why not spread?" This was a good opportunity to make a name for himself. As long as they spread the news, not only would the great Yen kingdom know about him, but the other countries would also know that a 16-year-old genius medicine saint had appeared in their pharmacist guild today. Looking at the young man's serious expression, looking at his sparkling eyes fixated on him, Elder Yu sighed, stood up and said, "Don't worry, this old man will instruct them to keep this a secret. Your name will definitely not be leaked out." Chapter 526. The three examiners widened their eyes and stared at the youth's departing figure. They only turned around to look at Elder Yu after he had disappeared. One of them asked foolishly, Is this really a secret?" Elder Yu glared at them when he heard that. "What do you mean by really a secret? Did I just say that to fool him?" "Secret. The three of you, keep this to yourselves. Don't tell anyone else." "Yes, yes." The three of them quickly responded and wiped off their cold sweat. Needless to say, they knew how terrifying it was to offend a medical sage. If they offended a medical sage, they didn't even need to do it themselves. They just needed to take a bottle of medicine and ask a strong person to help them deal with it. They had seen too many of such things and didn't dare to get into trouble. On the other side, Fengzhou, who had left the guild, was in a good mood. She took a deep breath and exhaled gently. Her gaze turned and fell on the tea house not far away. She walked towards it. Before she entered the tea house, Ling Shuang and Leng Hua came out to greet her. "Master, you're back. Are you tired? Hurry up and rest in the tea house." Ling Shuang just looked at her quietly, his eyes filled with joy. Leng Hua, on the other hand, had a happy smile on his face. He asked her if she was tired after going in for so long and led her to the entire second floor that had been reserved by the Yama Lord. Walking up to the second floor, she glanced at the empty and quiet second floor. Her gaze turned and fell on Ling Mohan, who was sitting by the street drinking tea. She smiled and said, "You're really rich. You can reserve the entire second floor just to drink tea." Ling Mohan looked at her with his deep black eyes. He scanned her from head to toe, and when he saw that she was as clean as she had been when she went in without any accident, he looked away. His deep voice slowly came out of his mouth. "Why didn't you wear the badge when you got it? Do I look like someone who likes to show off? This young master is indifferent to fame and fortune. If it weren't for the fact that I need this medicine saint's badge, I wouldn't even bother to take the test." As she spoke, she tossed a badge in her hand. At the same time, she looked at Ling Mohan with a smile on her face. "Let me tell you, when I passed the assessment, that old man you kept trying to rope me in, saying that he wanted to buy my medicine at a high price, and even said that he wanted to invite me to be his guild's guest elder." Hearing this, Hui Lang and Ying Yi, who were waiting at the side, couldn't help but widen their eyes and look at her in astonishment. Even Ling Mohan, who was sipping his tea, had a slight change in his gaze. Once again, his gaze fell on the little woman who was behaving like a little fox with her tail up. He asked in a low voice with a slight smile, "Then what did you say?" He played with the teacup in one hand and looked at her with a smile in his deep black eyes. He felt that with her strange personality, he couldn't expect much from her. When Hui Lang and Ying Yi heard their master ask the question they wanted to know, they couldn't help but swallow their saliva and looked at Fengzhou. A guest elder of the pharmacist guild. That wasn't a position that just anyone could take up. Did the ghost doctor agree or not? She should have agreed, right? Only a fool would reject such a good thing. Only Ling Shuang and Leng Hua looked calm. No matter what decision their master made, they felt that it was right. Seeing that everyone's gaze fell on her, looking at their curious expressions, she felt more and more that her rejection of the position of guest elder was a very impressive thing. Thus, she coughed lightly, her small face full of pride. Of course I didn't agree. I rejected it directly. Chapter 527. Ling Mohan's deep black eyes flashed with an "I knew it" expression. His face was obviously cold and stiff, but his thin lips covered by his beard couldn't help but reveal a smile. That smile gradually widened, and couldn't stop it from rising. However, he had too much beard, and no one saw it. Hui Lang and Ying Yi were dumbfounded, thinking that they had heard wrongly. What did she say? She said that she directly rejected it. The two of them stared blankly, unable to speak for a moment. They only felt that it was inconceivable, too inconceivable. How could there be such an idiot in this world who didn't want benefits? Moreover, this idiot was actually the ghost doctor who had always been as cunning as a fox. After Fingzhou spoke, she saw that there was something wrong with everyone's expressions. She couldn't help but ask blankly, "What's wrong? Is there something wrong?" At this time, shouldn't they be telling her that she was indeed the ghost doctor, and that only she had such courage? At this time, shouldn't they be telling her, "Ghost doctor, I admire you so much. Only you dared to reject the position of a guest elder in the Pharmacists' Association." Looking at their expressions, it seemed that something was wrong. "Ghost doctor, did you reject the medicine and not let him buy it? Or did you reject that guest elder?" Hui Lang asked cautiously. Fingzhou, who had been made nervous by them, blinked, and with a face full of confusion, she said, "I rejected both." As soon as she finished speaking, she saw that Hui Lang was petrified, staring at her stiffly. She couldn't help but look at Ling Mohan, who was drinking tea. "Uncle, did I do something wrong?" Ling Mohan took a sip of tea, glanced at her confused face, and said, "There are only 4 guest elders in the Pharmacists' Association, and their representative power is extraordinary. Moreover, the guest elder is only a nominal position, but can enjoy the various benefits and protection of the Pharmacists' Association." His voice paused, and looking at the dumbfounded woman, a smile appeared on his lips, and he continued, "Moreover, there is a very generous offering in hundreds of precious elixirs every year. Apart from that, you can freely participate in various large-scale activities held by the Pharmacists' Association, and you will be treated with respect when you enter the various branches of the Pharmacists' Association. As long as there is a branch of the Pharmacists' Association, the guest elder will have all kinds of benefits." He played with the teacup in his hand, and said, "The Pharmacists' Association that you went for the assessment is the main Pharmacists' Association, and the guest elder position, the significance is even more extraordinary." Speaking of this, his eyes were full of mockery. "I just didn't expect that you would be so indifferent to fame and fortune, and directly rejected it. This old man you. Elder's face, he's. Who knew that there were such benefits as. This can't blame. She had no idea that there would be such a great benefit. If she had known, she would have agreed long ago." Thinking of this, she came to the table, looked at Ling Mohan eagerly, and asked, "Uncle, what do you think if I go back now and ask for the guest elder position back?" However, without waiting for him to speak, she slammed her hands on the table, and shouted with a conflicted face, "But this won't do. Where's my modesty? Where's my pride? How can I go and ask for it back? It's all that old man Yu's fault." Chapter 528. Hearing this, Fengzhou's expression changed. He looked left and right, then pretended not to hear anything and looked at Lang Shuang and Lang Hua. We've been out for some time. Let's go back to the inn to rest and order a few dishes to celebrate getting the medicine sage badge. Ling Hua smiled and said, Master, I heard that there's a restaurant in the city that specializes in braised pork trotters. It's delicious. I'll go buy a few and bring them back to the inn. Walking to Ling Hua's side, she patted his shoulder and smiled. You don't have to go. Let Hui Lang go. Hui Lang runs faster. As she said this, she turned around and glanced at Hui Lang. Seeing this, Hui Lang smiled awkwardly. Ninth young master, don't worry. Leave this to me. I'm the best at running errands. Only the ghost doctor would make a strong Jindan cultivator like him run errands to buy pork trotters. And I knew it's best to leave this to you. I'll give you something another day. Her eyes curved as she said this. As soon as she finished speaking, she quickly went downstairs and headed towards the inn. Humph. This cowardly woman. Seeing her leave as if she was escaping, Ling Mohan couldn't help but snort coldly. He knew that this woman wouldn't listen. He had already said it, but she didn't dare to accept it. Hui Lang and Ning Yi lowered their heads and stood respectfully, pretending not to have heard anything. Ling Mohan got up and walked past the two. His footsteps paused, and he glanced at Hui Lang. You have to turn in the things she gave you. He dared to accept things from his woman. He must be tired of living. Hui Lang hadn't recovered from the joy of the ghost doctor giving him something. When he heard this, he hurriedly replied, Yes, your subordinate will definitely turn it in. Humph. Ling Mohan snorted coldly, and walked down with his hands behind his back. At this moment, Hui Lang exhaled lightly, wiped his cold sweat, and looked at Ning Yi with a sad face. Why do you think the ghost doctor likes to ask me to do things? Why haven't I seen her ask you to run errands? This was too good to him. His master was almost dissatisfied. Ning Yi glanced at him and said, Didn't you just say it? You're the best at running errands. If she doesn't ask you, who else would she ask? As he spoke, he quickly followed his master in front. The corner of Grey Wolf's mouth twitched. He was the one who said it, so he could only obediently go and buy the pig trotters. On the other side, the manager of the inn was wiping off his cold sweat. His legs trembled as he looked at the president of the black market who had been sitting on the first floor for a few hours. Could it be that the people living on the second floor were blind enough to provoke people from the black market? Otherwise, why would the president of the black market sit here for hours and not leave? Just as he was thinking about this, he heard the voice of the black market's president. Manager. President, what are your orders? He's sats, he's and he too's to speak him, to him, to think, he, and ask, he, you, to him, he, to go. Yes, he didn't say. The manager wiped the sweat on his forehead and said, But they won't run away. Their horses are still behind. When the waiter went into the room to clean, he saw their little pet locked in the room. He should have gone out to do something. Chapter 529. Chairman Ko looked back and saw that it was indeed the ghost doctor. He quickly got up to greet him. Just as he was about to call him the ghost doctor, he remembered what he had told him and changed the way he addressed him. With a smile on his face, he said, Ninth young master, you're finally back. Chairman Ko. Fengjiu raised his eyebrows and looked at the person who came up to greet him with a smile. I know that ninth young master lives here, so I specially came to visit. He smiled and narrowed his eyes. His amiable smile made him look very easy to get along with. However, everyone knew that anyone who could become the chairman of the black market would not be easy to get along with. It was just that he had different attitudes towards different people. I went out early in the morning. I think you must have waited for a long time. She smiled. Since he was already here, she naturally had to be polite. So she gestured for him to enter. Please come in, Chairman Ku. I just came back from outside and haven't had lunch yet. Let's go in together. Hearing this, Chairman Ku, who had waited for a few hours, immediately calmed down. The smile on his face deepened and he hurriedly said, Ninth young master's hospitality really makes me very happy. As he spoke, a man in a black robe with a big beard came up and stopped beside ninth young master. Seeing this, he asked, May I know who this is? He's my friend. His surname is Ling. Fingzhou smiled and glanced at Ling Mohan beside him. This is Chairman Ku of the black market. Ling Mohan only glanced at President Ku and then walked inside without even saying hello to anyone. Even so, Chairman Ku didn't dare to show any displeasure on his face. Because when that man glanced at him, that deep and sharp gaze swept past him, he felt as if he was enveloped by a cold aura, causing him to be startled. Just one look was enough to make him feel scared. This man was definitely not an ordinary person. I'm sorry, he's like this. Fengzhou smiled apologetically. It's okay, it's okay. Chairman Ku chuckled and followed him inside. Leng Hua asked the innkeeper to prepare some food and wine and send it to the room on the second floor. The innkeeper didn't dare to be negligent, and hurriedly ordered the waiter to give the order. In his heart, he let out a light sigh. It was fine as long as they weren't here to cause trouble. He was just afraid that the inn would be smashed. In the room on the second floor, Fengzhou, Ling Mohan, and Chairman Ku sat down at the table in the outer room. After the food and drinks were served, Ling Hua poured tea for the three of them and stood aside quietly. Ninth young lord, this is a gift I've prepared for you. President Ku gestured for someone to bring the gift over. How can I accept such a gift from President Ku? President Ku smiled and said, It's just some local specialties. It's not an expensive gift. Ninth young master, please accept it. If Fengzhou didn't dare to do so, it would be embarrassing. Therefore, she gestured for Lang Hua to put the gift away and said to Chairman Ku, Thank you very much, Chairman Ku. Forgive me for being presumptuous. In fact, I've come to visit today because I have a request. He didn't beat around the bush and directly stated his purpose. Hearing this, Fengzhou glanced at Ling Mohan, who was quietly drinking tea, and looked at Chairman Ku with a smile. Chairman Ku is the chairman of the black market. If it's something that even Chairman Ku can't do, I'm afraid I can't help. Chapter 530. Seeing this, Fengzhou had no choice but to say, President Ku, tell me about it. To be honest, my cultivation has been stagnant ever since I entered the nascent soul stage. I haven't been able to find the root of the problem. I heard from my clan brother that the ninth young master's medical skills are amazing. It's rare to meet the ninth young master here, so I'd like to ask the ninth young master to take a look at me. Oh. Fengzhou was surprised. She originally thought that he wanted to ask for a pill, so she rejected him directly. She hadn't been refining pills recently, and her control of pills wasn't as good as that of medicine. But since he was asking for help, there was no harm. Show me your hand. She motioned for him to show his wrist. Hearing this, President Ku was overjoyed. He immediately rolled up his sleeve slightly, exposing his wrist on the table. He watched as the ghost doctor raised her hand to take his pulse, but at this moment cough. A light cough was heard, startling him and the ghost doctor. They glanced at Ling Mohan, who was staring at them with one hand on his lips and slowly putting it down after a light cough. They didn't understand what was going on. Ling Mohan glanced at the two of them. His deep gaze swept across the room and landed on Lang Hua. He ordered in a deep voice, Why aren't you getting a handkerchief for your master? Hearing this, the few people in the room were instantly petrified. The shock on their faces couldn't be concealed. Especially President Ku, who opened his mouth wide in shock. He looked at the bearded man dumbfoundedly. What did this mean? Could it be that he couldn't let the ninth young master's hand touch his? Her lips moved and she wanted to ask, but when she saw the cold gaze of the man who was sitting upright, she felt a chill run down her spine and her whole body withered in an instant. Hearing this, Ling Hua glanced at his master, then took out a thin handkerchief from his sleeve to cover President Ku's wrist. He explained, "My master has always been like this when he takes a pulse. I didn't know the ninth young master's rules. Fortunately, this young master Ling reminded me." He smiled sheepishly. As the president of the black market, he was afraid of the bearded man. No one would believe him even if he told them. Feng Jiu glanced at Ling Mohan with a faint smile, then stretched out a few fingers and pressed on Chairman Ku's wrist. After feeling, she couldn't help but be startled. Then, she smiled and said, "Chairman Ku, don't be too nervous. Relax, your pulse is beating too fast. I can't diagnose it accurately." "Oh, okay. Although he responded like this, he couldn't relax when he saw the bearded man's eyes staring at them. Seeing that, Feng Jiu could only shake his head helplessly and withdraw his hand. "This won't do. We can't find anything. Let's eat first and search later." As she spoke, she looked at Ling Mohan and asked with a teasing smile, "Uncle, I see that you've been coughing a lot recently. Is it because you're old and your health isn't too good? Do you want me to show you?" Hearing this, Ling Mohan looked slightly uncomfortable and picked up the teacup to drink again. His eyes looked to the other side, and he didn't respond to her words. Chairman Ku looked back and forth between the two of them. Seeing their strange expressions, a thought came to his mind. These two aren't gay, are they? Chapter 531. During the meal, Ling Mohan constantly helped Feng Jiu to put food in his bowl. President Ku ate and talked with him. After the meal, he felt like he had eaten something, but he didn't know what he had eaten. In short, he didn't know what to eat. Feng Jiu saw that President Ku had been in a nervous state with Ling Mohan here. He couldn't help but smile and looked at the person sitting upright. "Uncle, why don't you go out for a walk? To help with digestion." Hearing her words, Ling Mohan glanced at her, and then looked at Chairman Ku, who was a little tense. Under his gaze, President Ku hurriedly said, that, "Why don't I?" Before he finished speaking, the bearded man had already stood up and walked out without saying a word. "President Ku, relax, don't be too nervous." She couldn't help but laugh. A dignified president of the black market was actually scared by Ling Mohan to the point of trembling. But that was also true. That guy's pressure and momentum were not comparable to ordinary people, and it was indeed quite scary. President Ku smiled embarrassedly, relaxed his tense mood, and then stretched out his hand. Feng Jiu felt his pulse and frowned slightly. After a long while, he said, "Your body is quite good in all aspects, and there is no pain. The reason why you can't advance and are stuck in the early yuanying stage is because you have an old injury in your body. This old injury is damaged and hinders your advancement. Do you feel pain 2 fingers below your left abdomen every once in a while?" Hearing Feng Jiu's words, President Ku was startled, and his eyes gradually widened in surprise. Yes, there is such a place that occasionally hurts, and that place was injured more than 20 years ago. I have asked some doctors, and they all said that it has been too long and they can't cure it completely. I didn't expect that it was caused by this old injury. It is indeed difficult to cure, because it has been too long. Feng Jiu said, frowning slightly. It is difficult to cure it with medicine, but there is a way. Ninth young master, please advise. Go and look for a rank 6 Vitality Recovery Pill. Only a rank 6 Vitality Recovery Pill can heal your old injuries. Even medicine can't reach that level of healing efficacy. The level 6 Recovery Pill was a pill used to heal internal injuries. At the same time, it also had the ability to heal old injuries. However, she was unable to refine a level 6 recovery pill at the moment. Hearing Fingzhou's words, Chairman Cook sighed softly. I've heard of the level 6 recovery pill that ninth young master mentioned, but it's a level 6 recovery pill. Even in the entire Yen Kingdom, you can't find a single one. Although an alchemist was similar to a pharmacist, the effects of alchemy were far more powerful than that of pharmacists. However, it was precisely because of the powerful effects of alchemy that there would be a lot of alchemy toxins. The higher the level of the alchemy, the more successful it would be to refine it. Level 6 alchemy pills were extremely rare even in the surrounding third-class countries. Even if there were, they would have been taken away by the major powers and clans. No matter how powerful the black market was, he was only a president. How could he have the ability to obtain such a priceless and precious alchemy pill? Thus, he once again placed his hopes on Fingzhou. Ninth young master, I heard from my younger brother that besides being a pharmacist, you are also an alchemist. Could it be that even you can't do anything? Chapter 532. At this time, she was thinking that after she found her grandfather, she would first return to the Phoenix dynasty to study alchemy, and then prepare to advance to the foundation establishment stage. That should be enough. As for her mother, with her current strength, she wouldn't be able to do much even if she went to a first-tier powerful country. She might as well advance to the foundation establishment stage first. Just as she was thinking, she saw President Cook sitting in front of her with a worried face. She remembered that he was President Cook's elder brother from the Qingting country. President Cook had helped her a lot and even gave her a luxurious flying ship. Thus, after thinking for a while, she said, President Cook, actually, you don't have to worry now. Your injury won't be a big problem for the next 50 years. It's just that it will be difficult for you to advance in your cultivation. However, if it can be cured, advancing to the next level is just around the corner. Who knew that it would have been better if she hadn't said anything? Once she did, President Ku's face turned pale. What? Won't be a big problem for the next 50 years. Then ninth young lord means that there might be a problem in the next 50 years. If you keep cultivating, then your internal injury will continue to be stimulated, so I suggest that before this injury is cured, it's best to stabilize your cultivation. Don't try to advance to the next level. She wasn't trying to scare him. If he kept trying to advance with an old injury, then his internal injury would also be stimulated. Hearing this, President Ku sighed. Unfortunately, this injury was caused after I entered the nascent soul stage. If it was before the nascent soul stage, then this wouldn't have happened on the day the nascent soul was formed. Saying this, he stood up and bowed to Fingzhou. No matter what, I have to thank ninth young lord today. These years, I have asked many doctors, but no one could tell what the problem was. Now that ninth young lord has mentioned it, I know what to do in the future. Seeing this, Fingzhou didn't know what to say. After giving him a few instructions, he personally sent him out. After President Ko left, Fingzhou looked around and didn't see Ling Mohan. Especially when he saw that Ying Yi and Hui Lang were also here without their master, he asked, "Where's your master? Why aren't the two of you guarding here?" Master said that he's going out for a walk. He doesn't need us to follow him. We just need to guard the ninth young master, Ying Yi replied, standing straight by the door. Ninth young master, my master is worried about you. That's why he told us to guard it. Hui Lang grinned and asked, Ninth young master, you said you wanted to give me something. What is it? Upon hearing this, even Ing Yi looked at Feng Zhou. However, he felt that she would at most give Hui Lang some self-defense potions. After all, she was a pharmacist and had no shortage of potions. Hui Lang, you've been in the golden core stage for a long time, haven't you? She asked with a smile, looking him up and down. Actually, it's not that long. I entered the golden core stage much faster than the average person. Master gave us a lot of pills to increase our strength. With their master's status, they indeed did not lack those medicinal pills. Therefore, other than their own talents, they were able to advance so quickly with the help of medicinal pills. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to reach the gold core stage at their age. Chapter 533. Hearing this, Hui Lang replied with a serious expression, "Yes, our master's status is extremely honorable. Ninth young lord, don't miss this opportunity." Feng Zhou's mouth twitched and he looked at him speechlessly. Sure enough, like master, like subordinate. Ninth young lord, where's my present? His eyes lit up. Although he had to hand over his present, seeing what the ghost doctor gave him was still worth being excited about. The medicine I concocted during the examination. She took out the medicine from her space and handed it to him while saying, "Although your master has plenty of medicinal pills, this is also a token of my sincerity. Consider it as thanks for running errands for me during that time." She was referring to the matter of him drugging Murongbo at night. "Many thanks, ninth young lord." Hui Lang's eyes lit up and he happily took the medicine. He said, "Ninth young lord's medicine can't be bought with money. It's different from the ones my master gave me. However, ninth young lord, can you tell me about the effects and uses of this medicine? It can help you increase your strength. It's only suitable for Aurus core stage cultivators," she said as she walked back to her room. She had gone to the Pharmacist Guild early in the morning for the examination, so she was a bit sleepy now. It was better to go back and sleep first. As she walked into her room, she said to the Leng Shuang behind her, "I'm going to sleep for a while. Don't disturb me." "Yes." The Leng Shuang answered and closed the door. He then stood outside the door. Seeing Feng Zhou return to his room, Ing Yi looked at Hui Lang and said, "You're in luck. The medicine refined by ninth young lord is definitely not inferior to those people's. If you drink this medicine, you might be able to directly enter the nascent soul stage." Hui Lang was also very happy at this time, but he didn't lose his head. Instead, he carefully put away the medicine. "Master said that I shouldn't try to break through to the nascent soul stage for now. He said that I should take root and wait until he says I can break through to the nascent soul stage. At that time, my foundation will be much more stable and my path of cultivation will be much longer. Hey, where do you think Master went? Why hasn't he come back yet?" Hui Lang looked around and didn't see his master's figure. He couldn't help but feel puzzled. Based on their master's personality, he would rather stay in his room than go out for a walk. Originally, they thought that he would come back after walking around the neighborhood, but who knew that he still hadn't seen him until now. However, what the two of them didn't expect was that after the time it took for an incense stick to burn, their master returned, but there was a woman following behind him. It can't be. Who's that girl? Hui Lang was a little dumbfounded. His master had gone out for a round, how could he have provoked someone like that? She looks familiar. Ing Yi said, staring at the woman behind their master. Familiar? I can't think of it. I only know that if ninth young lord finds out, it'll be terrible. When Hui Lang said this, even Ing Yi fell silent. Ling Mohan's face was slightly gloomy, and his whole body exuded a cold air, but the person following him seemed to be unaware of it. She kept walking beside him, trying to talk to him. After entering the inn, they went directly to the second floor. Ling Mohan glanced at the closed room, looked at Hui Lang and asked, "Where is she?" "Ninth young lord is taking a nap." Chapter 534. Ling Mohan glanced at him, did not answer and went straight into the room, only leaving a sentence, "Don't let anyone disturb my rest." Looking at the door slamming shut, Hui Lang touched his nose and glanced at Ying Yi. Seeing his face in contemplation, he asked, "What are you thinking about?" "That woman, I remember." Ying Yi said. His eyes moved away from the woman below and fell on Hui Lang. Who? He often followed Master, how could he not remember who this woman was? The mentor from the 6-star academy who came from a third-class country, also an admirer of Master. Ying Yi said, looking at the woman downstairs and said, "I didn't expect to meet her in this place." Speaking of this, his face was a bit strange. He was thinking, if this woman was seen by the ghost doctor, what would happen? This was an admirer of Master. Oh. It's her. No wonder I thought she looked familiar. Hui Lang suddenly remembered who the woman downstairs was. When their master used the identity of Ling Mohan to mingle in the Enchanting Kingdom's 6-star academy, this woman was said to have been pestering their master. They had also seen her before, but they did not expect that the female mentor of the 6-star academy would actually come here and meet their master. "Hey, what do you think will happen if the ghost doctor sees the woman downstairs?" Hui Lang asked curiously, his eyes flashing with excitement. Ying Yi glanced at him. "Won't you know when the time comes?" Hearing this, although they knew it was true, but at this time their hearts were excited. They were not worried that the ghost doctor would suffer a loss in the hands of that woman, they were just excited to know, if the ghost doctor saw a woman who dared to pester their master, what would the ghost doctor do? Jealous? They seemed to have never heard of the ghost doctor being jealous, they could not imagine the picture at all. Angry? This was very likely. However, what made them wait for a while was that Fingzhou slept until the sky gradually darkened, and the streets were lit with red lanterns. Among them, even their master had woken up, walked out of the room, and sat down on the first floor. As for the woman, since she came back with their master, she did not leave. Therefore, when Ling Mohan came to the first floor to drink tea, she was not afraid of the cold air on his body, came to his table and sat down, as if she was familiar with him. Of course, Ling Mohan just sipped his tea quietly and didn't say a word. He didn't even look at the beautiful woman. Until he heard the sound of the door opening on the second floor, his eyes slightly moved, as if he was waiting for something, and sat quietly. Feng 9, who had just woken up, was still sleepy. Her half-squinted eyes were a little languid. She was wearing a dazzling red dress. The lapel of her dress was slightly open, probably because she had just woken up, and her snow-white skin was exposed. She raised her hand slightly to yawn, and casually asked Ling Shuang, who was guarding by the door. "What's the matter?" She raised her hand slightly to yawn, and casually asked Ling Shuang, who was guarding the door. "Uncle, are you back yet?" "He's back, he's sitting downstairs." Ling Shuang replied, his eyes sweeping downstairs. Fingzhou heard and walked to the railing to take a look down. With this look, she could not help but widen her eyes. Her sleepiness was greatly awakened, her face full of disbelief and curiosity. Chapter 535. Upon hearing this, Hui Lang, who had been waiting for her to wake up, quickly said, No, ninth young master, please don't misunderstand. She was not brought back by my master, she followed him back by herself. Upon hearing this, Fingzhou blinked and asked curiously, You know her? A stranger dared to stick to uncle. She must have some guts. She is a teacher at Enchanting Kingdom's 6-star academy and an admirer of my master. It is said that she came from a third-class country, but I don't know why she has been pestering my master. Speaking of this, he quickly assured, but my master has never been nice to her, please don't misunderstand. Misunderstand? She rolled her eyes and looked at Ling Mohan, who was sitting down and drinking tea, but did not chase the woman away. A sly light flashed in her eyes, and the smile on her lips was even a bit strange at this moment. No, no, I won't misunderstand. She smiled and waved her hand. Then, she walked down the stairs. Ling Mohan, who was drinking tea, was looking forward to it. He really wanted to know what she would do when she saw a woman pestering him. Jealous? This was unlikely, that woman did not know what jealousy was. Happy? This was more like it. She would probably try to sell him to others. Mohan, my house is in this area. Since you are here, why don't you stay at my house? Staying at an inn is not as comfortable as staying at your own house. The woman said softly, her beautiful eyes filled with joy. She did not expect that she would meet someone who she had not heard from for so long. If this was not fate, then what was? Uncle, who is this beautiful sister? Feng Jiu smiled and squinted his eyes. His handsome and delicate face looked harmless and innocent. When he looked at the woman, he put his hands on Ling Mohan's shoulders. Ling Mohan was stunned. He turned his head slightly and looked at the slender fingers that were as tender as ginger. When the woman heard Feng Jiu's words, she was happy, but when she saw that it was a handsome young man who put his hands on Ling Mohan's shoulders and asked with a smile, she was unhappy. She knew that the bearded Ling Mohan hated it the most when others touched him. Just as she was about to scold him, she saw a scene that made her dumbfounded. You're awake. Did you sleep well? A low and deep voice that carried a hint of magnetism sounded out, and it was mellow like fine wine, causing others to be involuntarily intoxicated. But after he tilted his head slightly and glanced at the hand on his shoulder, his deep eyes moved slightly, and he naturally reached out to hold Feng Jiu's hand. He pulled her into his arms and directly held her in his arms, not letting go. Not only did the woman widen her eyes in astonishment, but even the guests on the first floor turned their heads to stare at the two of them in astonishment. However, the difference was that they were a little more clear-headed than the woman. It was as if they knew it would be like this. Feng Jiu's eyes widened. She did not expect this uncle to be so shameless. She wanted to tease him, but who knew that he would beat her at her own game? Wasn't she rushing forward to let him take advantage of her? Chapter 536. Since he wanted to play, then she would accompany him to the end. Thus, she wrapped her arms around his neck and buried her face in the crook of his neck. Her voice carried a hint of laziness and a hint of coquettishness as she whispered, "Uncle, I couldn't sleep well without you by my side." Ling Mohan's body suddenly stiffened and his whole body tensed up. The hateful little woman in his arms had intentionally or unintentionally sprayed her breath on his neck. That intimate whisper was like a kitten's, and it easily set him on fire. Feeling his body heating up, he couldn't help but smile bitterly in his heart. Was he getting into trouble? He didn't expect that once he touched her, the self-control that he had always been proud of would go out of control. The most hateful thing was that the little woman in his arms even raised her head shyly and looked around. "Uncle, let go of me quickly. This is the first floor. It's not good to have so many people watching." The face of the woman sitting across the table turned green and white. She looked at Ling Mohan in shock and disbelief, and then looked at the enchanting and charming handsome young man. At this moment, she finally understood why Ling Mohan had always treated women with such disdain. It turned out that it wasn't that she wasn't charming enough, nor was it that she wasn't good enough. It was because he was gay. He only liked men. As for the four people standing at the side, they felt helpless when they saw the two masters playing in front of so many people. These two masters didn't care about the gazes of others when they were playing, so they didn't think much of it. However, when they saw the astonished gazes around them, they felt their scalps go numb. "It's okay, I don't care." He hugged her with one hand and took a sip of tea with the other to hide the smile on his lips. He asked again, "Are you thirsty?" Seeing that he didn't put down the teacup and stared at her with a pair of burning eyes, Fengjiu's mouth twitched and she smiled embarrassedly. "No, I'm not thirsty." She didn't want to drink the tea that he had drunk. "Well, Teacher Ling, I suddenly remembered that I have something to do at home. I won't disturb you." The woman on the other side finally couldn't stand it anymore. Thinking that the man she liked was actually gay, she even had the heart to die at this moment. Fortunately, she discovered it now. Otherwise, she would still be thinking about how to find him. The two of them turned their heads at the same time and looked at the woman with an ugly expression. She quickly got up and left as if she was escaping. Fengjiu was stunned for a moment and couldn't help but laugh. He. "Uncle, it seems like your admirer isn't that great." As she was laughing, she saw the man's pair of deep black eyes staring at her. She felt guilty and asked, What's wrong?" "Just now, you said that you can't sleep well without me." There was a hint of a smile in his deep voice, and a hint of a smile and gentleness appeared in his eyes. Fengjiu was unable to look straight at his gentle gaze, and he began to play dumb again. Was there? Why don't I remember?" As she spoke, she struggled to jump out of his arms, but the arm around her waist held her tightly and she couldn't move at all. Seeing this, she could only smile embarrassedly and look at him. "Uncle, look, this is the first floor. Everyone is watching." Chapter 537. Hearing this, no matter how thick-skinned Fengjiu was, she was embarrassed at this time. A faint blush appeared on her delicate face, coupled with her slightly embarrassed expression. It was a pleasing and charming scenery in Ling Mohan's eyes. Ling Mohan did not continue, but the corners of his mouth curved slightly, a smile floated on his lips, but, because of his beard, it could not be seen. "I'll accompany you to the night market in the city." He stood up holding her hand, and without waiting for her to refuse, he led her out. The four people behind him looked at each other, all smiled, and followed. The guests on the first floor also laughed loudly. After seeing so many of them, they were not surprised. Moreover, from the moment these people moved in, they could see that the relationship between the two was not ordinary. Sure enough, it was confirmed today. It seemed that their eyes were still very sharp. Even the flirting between the two big men couldn't escape their eyes. Fengjiu woke up in the evening, and spent a while on the first floor. At this time, she was led out of the inn by him, and saw that the shops on both sides of the street were hung up with red lanterns, and the pedestrians were very lively on the street, so she forgot about the incident in the inn. But why did she feel so strange when she looked down at the man holding her hands, with their fingers interlocked? "Uncle, are you going to take me shopping like this?" She waved her interlocked hands, and stared at him with a pair of smiling eyes. "You want to attract the attention of the whole night market." It was estimated that in the whole night market, there would not be a pair like them. Baw baw baw. What pair? She was not a pair with him. "I don't care, why do you care?" He glanced at her, but he was in a good mood. In the past, he had never thought that he would hold a woman's hand, and slowly walk with her on the street with their fingers interlocked. He only knew that this feeling was very strange, and it made his heart happy. From the corner of his eye, he glanced at the woman who was looking around, and the corners of his mouth raised slightly. He felt that, with her by his side, it was as if he had the whole world. That kind of satisfaction, that kind of happiness, was something that others could not understand. However, it was easy to win her heart, but difficult to win her heart. What should he do to make her happy? It seemed that he had to think carefully about whether or not he should try the beauty trap. The two strolled until late at night and ate supper before returning home. There were very few pedestrians on the street. Only the red lanterns hanging in front of the shops on both sides swayed gently in the night wind, making it seem very quiet and secluded. Compared to the things in the inns and restaurants, the street snacks are really more unique. I ate so much tonight that I'm still full. Her face was overflowing with a satisfied smile. Seeing that she was so easily satisfied, Ling Mohan's eyes softened. Since you like it, I'll take you to eat the local snacks every time we go to a place. When she heard this, her heart trembled slightly. She looked at him beside her and all sorts of feelings welled up in her heart. What's wrong? Ling Mohan asked, looking at her slightly lowered head, surprised by the change in her mood. Fengzhou shook her head. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know how to tell him that she didn't know how to respond to feelings. She was also afraid that she couldn't respond to his devotion and affection. Chapter 538. There were only a few people left on the street, but dozens of men in black suddenly appeared. Each of them was filled with a murderous aura, and they were charging towards them with long swords. Because of the appearance of the dozens of people, the people who were packing up the stalls on the street cried out in alarm. They threw down their things and ran for their lives. The atmosphere of the entire street changed because of the appearance of the dozens of men in black. That kind of bloodthirsty aura and coercion shrouded the surroundings in an instant, causing the air to freeze. Fengzhou, who was protected in Ling Mohan's arms, felt that something was wrong. She patted his hand and said, "Let go of me." The strength of these people was not simple. The lowest cultivation level was in the Golden Core realm, and there were several nascent soul realm cultivators among them. It was impossible for such a strong person to be sent out to deal with her, but to deal with Ling Mohan. No, perhaps it was not for Ling Mohan's identity, but his original identity. Otherwise, no force would send so many strong cultivators to kill him at once. Such strong cultivators must be trying to take his life. That's right, tonight seemed to be the 15th. These people seemed to like to attack on the 15th. They probably thought that Ling Mohan's body was the weakest on the 15th, and that the millennium chill in his body would act up. However, they did not know that with her pill suppressing the millennium chill, although it could not be cured temporarily, it would not act up again. With the coercion of the ancient mythical beast in her body and Ling Mohan's protection, she was not afraid of the coercion and murderous aura coming from all directions. However, Ling Shuang and Leng Hua, who were following behind her, turned pale under the coercion, and blood spilled out of their mouths. Grey Wolf and Ning Yi instantly stood in front of their two masters. At the same time, they released a signal. With a bang, a firework exploded in the night sky. In an instant, dozens of black-clothed men appeared and attacked the black-clothed man in front of them from behind. Ling Shuang and Leng Hua, come closer. She quickly ordered them to come closer. At the same time, she released the ancient aura in her body, forming a shield to block the coercion of the strong cultivators around them. Seeing this scene, Ling Mohan lowered his head and glanced at her, but did not let go of her. He continued to hold her in his arms and protect her. The person who came was at least a Jindan stage cultivator. Even though her skills were not bad, he was still worried about her leaving his side. Only by protecting her in his arms could he ensure that she would not suffer the slightest bit of harm. These people are here for you. Fengzhou frowned and said, they're very strong. Their bloodthirsty aura is stronger than the average assassins, and they're fighting without any regard for their lives. Your opponents aren't simple. Are you afraid? His lips curled as his deep gaze fell on her face. Scared? She raised her eyebrows and looked at him. She smiled and asked, if I said I was scared, would you let go? I won't. He hugged her tightly and stared at her with his dark eyes. His low and magnetic voice was serious and domineering. I'll never let go of you, and you don't have to be afraid. No matter how dangerous it is, I'll protect you and won't let anyone hurt you. Hearing this, her heart trembled. Her heart failed to live up to her expectations and started to beat wildly. She stared at him in a daze amidst the glint of the sword. It was as if there was a voice in her heart telling her not to hesitate, not to be afraid, try to believe, try to love. However, the words that came out of her mouth were, sigh. I knew that nothing good would come out of being associated with you. Chapter 539. Fingio rolled her eyes and said angrily, someone wants to kill you. How can you still laugh? She paused and looked at the men in black with a strange expression. How come I didn't know there were so many masters protecting us in the dark? All of them were either at the peak of the Golden Elixir realm or at the Yuaning realm. It felt like there were a lot of them. Where did this guy come from? Even the top families couldn't compare with this kind of power. Furthermore, her vigilance had always been high. There were so many people protecting her in the dark, but she didn't notice them all the way. Was she not vigilant enough? Or were these people good at hiding their aura? You don't know them, but they know you. Ling Mohan said and looked at the people fighting in front of them. He put his arm around her waist and said, leave this to them. Let's go back first. Hearing this, Fingio looked at Ling Shuang and Ling Hua. With her blocking the pressure for them, their expressions eased a lot. However, the aura of the battle here was too strong. With their strength, they couldn't bear it, so they nodded. Okay, let's go back first. Hui Lang and Ning Yi protected them as they left, and the men in black who came out to attack them were surrounded and killed by Ling Mohan's men. Fortunately, there were no civilians on the street in the middle of the night. As for the shops on both sides, they had already closed their doors and windows and hid. The battle started and ended in the middle of the night. Back at the inn, Fingio asked someone to prepare water for her to take a bath. After drying her hair, she put on her underwear and called out to Ling Shuang and Ling Hua outside, come in, you two. Master. The two entered the room and came to her. Fingio looked at the two who were still pale although their aura had eased. She took out 2 bottles of medicine from her space and said, drink one of these 2 bottles of medicine each. Rest early tonight. The two of them didn't take it. Instead, they lowered their heads. Master, we're sorry. Only at this moment did the two of them realize that they might be able to protect their master in the Phoenix dynasty, but outside, with their strength, if they were to encounter an expert, they wouldn't even be able to protect themselves. However, Fingio smiled slightly and said softly, the weakest of those people is at least in the middle of the golden core stage, and there are several nascent soul stage cultivators moving out at the slightest provocation. Their origins must be extraordinary. Not to mention you, if I didn't have a contract with Xiaohua, I wouldn't be able to withstand the pressure of such powerful cultivators. Besides, those are all old monsters. You guys are still young. There's no need to rush. Cultivate slowly and you'll become stronger one day. When she said this, she suddenly thought that if those people were old monsters, then what about Ling Mohan? His cultivation was unfathomable. How could there be such a heaven-defying freak at the age of 25? Hearing her words, the siblings looked at each other, and a warm current flowed through their hearts. Master was still comforting them and encouraging them at this time. How could they disappoint her? Thank you, Master. We understand. The two of them bowed respectfully. After receiving the medicine, they left the room. On the other side, after instructing Hui Lang and Ning Yi to make some arrangements, Ling Mohan came to Fingzhou's room. Seeing her sitting at the table in a daze, he asked, "What are you thinking about?" "You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.